Nathaniel Prescott's knees hit the dirt in the middle of Main Street. His hands reached toward the beggar woman, shaking so violently he couldn't control them. 7 years. 7 years of believing she drowned in Devil's Fork River. 7 years of empty graves and frozen grief. And now his 8-year-old son stood beside him, tears streaming down his small face, pointing at this ragged creature covered in filth and rags.
"I told you, Papa," Samuel whispered. "I told you Mama wasn't dead."
The richest man in Willow Creek couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare into eyes he'd buried 7 years ago. Subscribe now and comment your city below. Let's see how far this story travels. 30 minutes earlier, Nathaniel Prescott threw coins at beggars without looking at their faces. 3 silver dollars hit the dirt. He kept walking. That was the routine, every Sunday for 7 years. Same boardwalk, same mechanical charity, same refusal to see the broken people reaching for his scraps.
"Papa, slow down."
Samuel's small hand tugged at his coat. Nathaniel didn't slow down. "We're late for the feed store."
"But Papa."
"Samuel, I said no." The boy fell silent. He'd learned not to push. At 8 years old, Samuel Prescott already understood that his father's coldness wasn't cruelty. It was armor. Armor forged in the same river that had swallowed his mother 7 years ago. They passed Henderson's General Store. They passed the Lucky Dollar Saloon. They passed the church where Nathaniel had married Clara May Sullivan on a summer evening that felt like someone else's memory now. Then Samuel stopped walking. The boy's hand went rigid. His whole body froze mid-step, like a hunting dog catching a scent that changed everything. "Samuel, what?"
"Papa."
The word came out strangled.
"Papa, look."
Nathaniel turned. A beggar woman sat in the narrow gap between 2 buildings. Thin, ragged, hair hanging in matted tangles around a face turned downward. She was humming, a soft, tuneless melody that drifted through the Sunday crowd like smoke from a distant fire. "Just a drifter," Nathaniel said. "Town gets him sometimes. Let's go." He reached for Samuel's hand. The boy pulled away. "Samuel."
"That song,"
Samuel's voice cracked.
"Mama used to sing that song. Every night, when she put me to bed."
"You were 1 year old when your mother died. You don't remember."
"I do remember."
Samuel's chin jutted out, stubborn, defiant, so much like Clara that it hurt to look at him.
"And she has a doll, Papa. Look, she's holding a doll."
Nathaniel's eyes snapped to the woman. There, clutched against her chest, a cloth doll, dirty and worn, turned over and over in thin, trembling fingers. "Coincidence," Nathaniel said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Plenty of women carry dolls. Samuel was already moving, running, kneeling in the dirt beside the stranger before Nathaniel could stop him.
"Mama?"
The boy's voice shook.
"Mama, it's me. It's Samuel."
The humming stopped. Slowly the woman raised her head. Matted hair fell away from her face, and Nathaniel Prescott's world ended. The face was wrong, weathered, lined, aged by suffering that 7 years shouldn't have been able to inflict. But the bone structure was right, the jaw, the way her left eyebrow arched slightly higher than her right. And her eyes, brown gold, like honey in sunlight, the exact color Nathaniel had seen every morning for 6 years of marriage and tried to forget for 7 years of grief. "No," he breathed. "It's not possible." The woman stared at Samuel. No recognition, no spark of awareness, just emptiness, like windows into a house where no one lived anymore. Then she reached out and touched Samuel's cheek.
"Small,"
she murmured. Her voice was rough, broken, barely human.
So small.
Samuel burst into tears.
Mama, it's me. Don't you know me?
Nathaniel's legs moved without permission. He crossed the street, dropped to his knees in the dirt, brought his face level with hers, and saw the scar. There, on her left forearm, a curved, distinctive mark from where a green-broke horse had kicked her the summer before they married. Nathaniel had kissed that scar 1,000 times, had traced it with his fingers in the dark, had memorized every ridge and curve of it. Clara. The name tore from his throat like broken glass. Clara, can you hear me? Nothing. Just that vacant stare, that terrible emptiness. Do you know who I am? She tilted her head. The gesture was so familiar it made Nathaniel's chest crack open. Safe, she whispered. You're safe. A crowd was gathering. Nathaniel could feel eyes boring into his back. Whispered conversations spreading like wildfire. Mr. Prescott? Deputy Crawford's voice came from somewhere behind him. Is everything all right here? No, nothing was all right. Nothing would ever be all right again. I think, Nathaniel heard himself say, I think she's my wife. The gasp that ran through the crowd was audible. Nathaniel, have you lost your mind? Cornelius Webb pushed through the onlookers, his banker's face sharp with contempt. Your wife drowned 7 years ago. We all attended the memorial. This is some vagrant who... Look at her eyes, Cornelius. Eye color proves nothing. Look at the scar on her arm. From my horse, the black stallion that kicked her before we married. Webb's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. This is insanity, he sputtered. You can't seriously expect anyone to believe. I don't care what anyone believes. Nathaniel stood, his decision made. I'm taking her home. You can't just watch me. He bent down and offered his hand to the woman. She looked at it for a long moment. Then, slowly, she took it. Her grip was weak, her palm rough with calluses and scars, but the touch sent electricity through Nathaniel's body, the same electricity he'd felt the first time Clara Sullivan had put her hand in his, 15 years ago, at a church social, when they were both young and whole and had no idea what the future held. Come on, he said softly. Let's get you home. She rose unsteadily. She was lighter than she should have been, fragile, breakable. She clutched the cloth doll to her chest with her free hand and let him lead her through the crowd. This isn't over, Nathaniel. Webb's voice followed them. I'll bring the territorial authorities into this. You can't just claim a mad woman as your wife because... Because what, Cornelius? Nathaniel turned. His voice was quiet, but hard as iron. Because I'm lonely? Because I've lost my mind? Or because you've never loved anyone enough to recognize them, even when they're broken beyond recognition? Webb's face went red. Better a fool with hope, Nathaniel said, than a wise man with nothing but money and regret. He turned his back on the banker and kept walking. Samuel appeared at his side, slipping his small hand into the woman's free one. She looked down at the boy, and something in her vacant expression softened. Mine, she murmured. He's mine. Yes, Nathaniel said, his voice cracking. He's yours. He's always been yours. The wagon was at the end of the street. Jake Thornton, his foreman, stood beside it. Jake had ridden into town an hour earlier to pick up supplies. Now his weathered face was pale with shock. Boss, Jake's voice was barely a whisper. Is that... Help me get her into the wagon. Jake didn't ask questions. He moved to assist, his work-hardened hands surprisingly gentle as he helped settle the woman on the feed sacks in the wagon bed. I saw her face, Jake said quietly.
up close, when you were helping her up.
And?
It's her, boss. I don't know how.
I don't know why. But that woman is Clara Prescott. I'd stake my life on it. Samuel scrambled up beside his mother, positioning himself like a small guard dog. I'll sit with her, Papa, so she's not scared. Good boy. Nathaniel climbed onto the driver's seat. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip the reins. 7 years. 7 years of believing she was dead, of mourning her, of building walls around his heart so thick that nothing could breach them. And now she was here, alive, broken beyond recognition, but alive. He snapped the reins. The horses lurched forward. Behind them, Willow Creek buzzed with gossip that would spread to every ranch and homestead within 50 miles by nightfall. Nathaniel Prescott, the cold-hearted widower who'd turned his grief into gold, had claimed a mad beggar woman as his dead wife. Let them talk. Let them judge. He was done with walls. The ride home took an hour. Nathaniel spent most of it in silence, his mind churning through possibilities and impossibilities. Behind him, Samuel talked softly to his mother, telling her about the ranch, about his horse, about the creek where he caught frogs in summer. The woman didn't respond to most of it, but occasionally she hummed. That same soft, tuneless melody. And each time, Nathaniel felt like he was being torn in half. Clara used to hum that melody when she was happy, when she was nervous, when she was thinking too hard and needed to calm herself. It had driven him crazy in the early days of their marriage. Later, he'd come to love it. After she died, he'd have given anything to hear it again. Now here it was, drifting from the wagon bed like a ghost song. The Prescott Ranch sprawled across 12,000 acres of prime grazing land. The house was a 2-story structure of wood and stone that Nathaniel had expanded twice since Clara's death. He told himself it was practical. Room for the business. Room for the hands who came and went. The truth was simpler. He'd been trying to fill the emptiness with square footage. Rosa Martinez was waiting when they arrived. The housekeeper had been with the family for 15 years. She'd known Clara. She'd mourned Clara. Now she stood in the doorway, one hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her weathered face.
Dios mío, she breathed. Señor Prescott, it is her. It is truly her.
We don't know that for certain yet.
I know it.
Rosa crossed herself.
I know it in my heart.
She needs help. A bath, clean clothes, food.
Of course, señor. Come, miss. Come with Rosa.
But when Rosa reached for the woman's arm, she flinched. A sound of distress escaped her throat. The humming intensified, frantic and afraid. It's okay, Mama. Samuel stepped forward. Rosa's nice. She won't hurt you. The woman's eyes found Samuel's face. The panic receded. She allowed Rosa to lead her toward the house, though she kept looking back at the boy. She knows him, Jake said quietly. Whoever she is, whatever's happened to her, she knows that boy belongs to her. Nathaniel watched them go. His chest felt like it was being crushed. I sent word to Doc Caldwell, Jake continued. He should be here within the hour. Good. Boss. Jake hesitated. What if the doc says it ain't her? What if we're wrong about all this? Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment. Then I'll have helped a woman who desperately needed help. Either way, I did the right thing. And if it is her? If she's been alive all this time? The question hit Nathaniel like a fist. If Clara had been alive all this time, then Nathaniel had stopped searching too soon, had given up, had mourned and moved on while she was out there somewhere, lost and alone and slowly losing her mind. The possibility was almost too terrible to contemplate. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life making it right," he said quietly. "However long that takes." He found Samuel in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a glass of milk he wasn't drinking. "Papa?" The boy's voice was small. "Is Mama going to be okay?" Nathaniel sat down across from his son. For 7 years he'd kept this boy at arm's length, unable to look at him without seeing Clara, unable to love him fully without feeling the knife of loss twist deeper. That ended now. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but we're going to do everything we can to help her." "She didn't know me," Samuel's lip trembled. "She looked right at me and didn't know who I was." "She knew you belonged to her. She said you were hers." "But she didn't know my name. She didn't remember." Nathaniel reached across the table and took his son's hand. "Samuel, listen to me. Whatever happened to your mother, whatever she's been through these past 7 years, it hurt her mind, hurt it badly. She may not remember things the way we do. She may never remember. But she's still Mama?" "Yes," Nathaniel's voice broke. "She's still Mama, and we're going to love her and take care of her no matter what." Samuel's tears spilled over. "I never stopped believing, Papa. Everyone said she was dead. You said she was dead. But I couldn't stop believing she'd come back." "I know, son. I know." "Are you mad at me? For believing when you didn't?" The question cut deep. Nathaniel pulled his son into his arms and held him tight. "No," he whispered. "I'm grateful. If you hadn't believed, if you hadn't recognized her today, we might have walked right past. She might have disappeared again, and we never would have known." "I'll never let her disappear again, Papa. Never." "Neither will I." Doc Caldwell arrived an hour later. He was a practical man in his 60s, not given to sentiment or speculation. He examined the woman for nearly an hour, while Nathaniel waited in his study, nursing whiskey he couldn't taste. When Caldwell finally came down, his face was grave. "Well?" Nathaniel demanded. "Physically, she's malnourished, dehydrated. Evidence of old injuries that healed poorly. Some scars that look like falls or cuts. One that appears to be a burn on her shoulder." "And mentally?" Caldwell sighed. "Severe psychological trauma, selective mutism, disorientation, regression to childlike behaviors. The humming, the doll, these are coping mechanisms, ways her mind protects itself from whatever she experienced." "Can you tell if she's Clara?" "I can tell you she has physical markers consistent with Clara Prescott. The scar from the horse, the mole at the base of her throat, the slight gap between her front teeth." Caldwell met Nathaniel's eyes. "Physically, she could be your wife, but I can't say for certain, not with her mental state as it is." "Will she recover?" "I don't know. Maybe with time, maybe with care and safety and patience. Maybe never." Caldwell stood. "The brain is a mystery, Nathaniel. Sometimes people recover from things that should have destroyed them. Sometimes they don't. All you can do is provide stability and hope for the best." After the doctor left, Nathaniel climbed the stairs to the guest room. The woman sat in a chair by the window, wearing one of Rosa's spare dresses. Her hair had been washed and braided. Without the layers of dirt, without the matted tangles hiding her face, she was unmistakably beautiful. And unmistakably Clara. Rosa sat nearby, keeping watch. "She ate a little soup," Rosa whispered. "And she spoke. Just one word, but she spoke." "What did she say?" "She looked at the wallpaper, the roses, and she said, 'Mine.'" Rosa's voice trembled. "Signor, she chose that wallpaper 15 years ago. She ordered it special from Denver because she loved the pattern." Nathaniel approached slowly. The woman watched him come, her eyes tracking his movement without fear.
Clara, he said softly, do you know where you are?
She looked around the room, at the furniture, at the wallpaper with its pattern of roses, at the view from the window.
Home,
she whispered.
Yes, you're home. The roses.
Her brow furrowed with effort.
I picked the roses. For the wall.
Nathaniel's breath caught.
Yes,
you did.
There was...
She stopped, her face twisted with concentration.
There was something. I needed to tell you. That night, before the water.
What did you need to tell me? She shook her head slowly. Tears began sliding down her cheeks.
Gone, she whispered. It's gone. Everything's gone.
Nathaniel knelt beside her chair, took her thin hands in his. Not everything, he said. You're here. Samuel's here. This is still your home. Whatever you've forgotten, whatever the river took from you, this is still where you belong. She looked at him, and for just a moment, something flickered in those empty eyes. Recognition. Memory. Love.
Nathaniel,
she breathed. His name. She'd said his name.
Yes.
His voice broke completely.
Yes, Clara. It's me. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I tried.
Her words came out in fragments.
I tried to find you. The water was so cold, so dark. I tried to come home. You did come home. You're home now. So long.
She was crying harder now.
So long. I couldn't remember. Couldn't find the way. Everything was broken and dark, and I couldn't...
Shh. He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully, like she might shatter.
It's over now. You're safe. You're home.
She clung to him, this broken, fragile woman who might be his wife, who was his wife. He knew it now with a certainty that went beyond scars and eye color and wallpaper. The way she fit against his chest, the sound of her breathing, the smell of her hair beneath the harsh soap Rosa had used.
It was Clara. His Clara. Alive. Papa?
Samuel stood in the doorway, his young face wet with tears. Come here, son. The boy ran to them. Nathaniel pulled him into the embrace, the three of them holding each other in the lamplight, while Rosa wept quietly in the corner.
We're together, Samuel whispered. We're finally together again.
Yes, Nathaniel said. We are. Outside, night had fallen over the ranch. Tomorrow would bring questions, doubts, challenges from Webb and the territorial authorities. The town would talk. The gossip would spread. There would be battles to fight and proof to provide, and 1,000 obstacles between this moment and any kind of peace. But for now, in this room, there was only this. A family, broken and scarred and incomplete, holding each other in the darkness. And something that felt almost like hope. Clara's voice drifted up from where her face was pressed against Nathaniel's chest.
The river, she murmured.
The river tried to take everything. But it didn't, Nathaniel said fiercely. It didn't take you. You survived. You found your way back.
Did I?
Her voice was barely audible.
Or did Samuel find me?
Does it matter? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly, he almost missed it.
No, it doesn't matter.
She pulled back just enough to look at her son. Her hand reached out, trembling, and touched his face.
My boy, she whispered. My beautiful boy. You got so big.
I'm 8 now, Mama. I can read and write a horse. Papa says next year I can learn to rope.
8.
Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks.
You were so small when I—" She stopped, her face contorted with pain. "When the water came," she finished. "When the water came and took me away." "But you came back," Samuel said fiercely. "You came back, and now we're going to be a family again. Right, Papa?" Nathaniel looked at his wife, at the emptiness still lurking behind her eyes, at the scars on her hands and the hollows in her cheeks, and all the evidence of 7 years of suffering he couldn't imagine. "Right," he said. "We're going to be a family again." Whatever it took, however long it took, he would bring her back from whatever darkness had claimed her. He would rebuild what the river had tried to destroy. He would be the husband he should have been, the father he should have been, the man Clara deserved. And if the world tried to take her from him again, God help anyone who stood in his way. Clara's hand found his. Her grip was weak but certain. "Home," she said again. And this time, something almost like a smile touched her lips. "Home," Nathaniel agreed. Outside, the stars emerged over Willow Creek, indifferent to the small miracle happening in the ranch house below. The same stars that had watched over Clara's empty grave for 7 years. The same stars that had witnessed Nathaniel's grief turned to stone. Now they witnessed something different. A beginning. A second chance. A love that refused to die, even when everything said it should. The river had tried to end their story, but stories, like people, don't always end when they're supposed to. Sometimes they simply pause. And sometimes, against all odds, they begin again. The first nightmare came 3 nights later. Nathaniel woke to screaming, raw, primal screams that tore through the quiet house like gunfire. He was out of bed and running before his eyes fully opened, his heart slamming against his ribs. Clara's room was chaos. She'd torn the blankets from the bed, knocked over the nightstand, and pressed herself into the corner like a trapped animal. Her eyes were wide and unseeing, fixed on something that existed only in her fractured mind. "The water!" she screamed. "The water won't stop! It's everywhere! I can't breathe! I can't—" "Clara!" Nathaniel approached slowly, hands raised. "Clara, you're safe. There's no water here." She didn't hear him. She was somewhere else entirely, trapped in the nightmare of the flood, reliving whatever horrors the river had inflicted 7 years ago. "Please," she sobbed, "please don't let me drown. Please." "You're not drowning." Nathaniel knelt in front of her, keeping his voice steady despite the terror clawing at his chest. "Clara, look at me. Focus on my voice. You're in the ranch house. You're safe. The river is miles away." Her wild eyes found his face, but didn't see him. "So cold," she whimpered. "The water was so cold, and I couldn't find the way out, and the baby—" She stopped. Her whole body went rigid. "What baby?" Nathaniel's blood turned to ice. "Clara, what baby?" But the moment was gone. Her eyes rolled back, and she slumped against the wall, unconscious. "Papa?" Samuel stood in the doorway, his small face white with fear. "Go back to bed, son." "Is Mama okay? I heard her screaming." "She had a bad dream. She's okay now. Go back to bed." Samuel didn't move. "She was dreaming about the river, wasn't she?" Nathaniel looked at his son, at the understanding in those 2 old eyes, and couldn't lie. "Yes." "Does she dream about it every night?" "I don't know." "I used to dream about it too." Samuel's voice was small. "When I was little, I'd dream about water taking Mama away, and I'd wake up crying, and you'd never come." The words hit Nathaniel like a blow. All those nights, all those years, his son, crying alone in the dark,
while Nathaniel buried himself in work and whiskey and walls. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have been there."
It's okay, Papa. You were sad.
Being sad isn't an excuse. I should have—
Can I stay with Mama? Samuel interrupted. Just for tonight? In case she has another bad dream?
Nathaniel looked at Clara, unconscious against the wall, and then at his son, standing brave and determined in the doorway. "Yes," he said. "Help me get her back to bed." Together, they lifted Clara and settled her on the mattress. She was lighter than Nathaniel remembered. Lighter than she should be. The nightgown Rosa had given her hung loose on her thin frame. Samuel climbed up beside her and took her hand.
It's okay, Mama, he whispered. The bad dream is over now. I'm here. I won't let the water take you again.
Clara's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, they were clear, present.
Samuel, she breathed. I'm here, Mama. Stay.
Her fingers tightened on his.
Stay with me. I will. I promise.
Nathaniel stood by the door, watching his wife and son, and felt something crack open in his chest that he'd kept locked for 7 years. Tears burned behind his eyes. He blinked them back. "I'll be right down the hall," he said. "If you need anything—"
Papa?
Samuel's voice stopped him.
What did Mama mean? About the baby?
Nathaniel's throat closed. "I don't know," he said. "We'll talk about it tomorrow." But he did know, or at least he suspected. And the suspicion was a blade twisting in his gut. Clara had been pregnant when the flood came. That's why she'd gone into the storm. That's why she'd been so desperate to reach him. She'd wanted to tell him about the baby. And somewhere in the river, somewhere in the 7 years of darkness that followed, she'd lost it. Nathaniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study, staring at the cold fireplace, and let the guilt consume him. If he'd been home that night instead of the north pasture, if he'd paid attention to the storm, if he'd come looking for her sooner, if he'd searched longer, if he hadn't given up. 1,000 ifs. 1,000 ways he'd failed her. And now she was back, broken and scarred and haunted by nightmares. And all he could do was watch and pray and try to become the man she'd needed him to be 7 years ago. Dawn found him still in the chair, whiskey untouched on the desk beside him. Rosa appeared in the doorway.
Señor,
"There is a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Visitors. 3 men from town. They say they are from the territorial authority." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Webb. The banker had made good on his threat. "Where are they?" "In the front parlor. I told them to wait." "Good. Don't let them near Clara. Don't let them near Samuel." He found the 3 men standing in his parlor like they owned it. Webb was there, of course, his face smug with self-righteousness. Beside him stood a thin man in his 50s with the sour expression of a bureaucrat, and a younger man who was clearly some kind of deputy. "Gentlemen," Nathaniel said coldly, "I don't recall inviting you onto my property." "Mr. Prescott," the thin man stepped forward, "I'm Commissioner Whitmore from the Territorial Authority. I've been asked to investigate a matter of some concern. Let me guess. Cornelius here has convinced you that I've lost my mind."
I've convinced them that a vulnerable woman is being kept in a situation that may not be in her best interest, Webb said smoothly. A woman who, I might add, cannot even confirm her own identity.
"She confirmed it last night. She said my name. She recognized the wallpaper she chose for our bedroom." "Wallpaper?" Whitmore's eyebrow rose. "You expect us to accept wallpaper as proof of identity?" "I expect you to accept that a woman who knows details about this house that only my wife would know is probably my wife." Or a clever imposter who's done her research. Research? Nathaniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. She can barely speak. She has nightmares every night. She can't remember what happened to her for 7 years. If this is an imposter, she's the most incompetent one in history. Which is exactly what a good imposter would want you to think, Webb said. Whitmore raised a hand. Gentlemen, please. Mr. Prescott, I need to interview the woman myself. Assess her mental state. Determine whether she's here of her own free will. She is. That's not for you to decide. A woman in her condition cannot give meaningful consent. That's why my office exists. To protect vulnerable individuals from situations that may not be in their best interest. Her best interest is to be with her family in her home. That remains to be determined. Nathaniel felt his hands curl into fists. And if I refuse to let you see her? Then I return with a court order and the territorial marshal. Whitmore's smile was thin and cold. Your choice, Mr. Prescott. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nathaniel's mind raced through options. He could throw them out, dare them to come back with their court order, buy himself time. But time for what? If he looked like he was hiding something, it would only make things worse. Fine, he said finally. You can see her, but I'm present during any interview. And if she becomes distressed, it stops immediately. Agreed. Nathaniel led them upstairs, his jaw tight with suppressed rage. Clara was awake now, sitting in the chair by the window with Samuel beside her. She looked up when they entered, and fear immediately clouded her features. Who are they? She asked, shrinking back. Officials from the county, Nathaniel said. They just want to ask you some questions. It's okay, Mama. Samuel squeezed her hand. Papa's here. He won't let them hurt you. Whitmore stepped forward, his manner professionally detached. Ma'am, I'm Commissioner Whitmore. I need to determine whether you're here of your own free will. Do you understand? Clara looked at Nathaniel, confusion and panic warring on her face. Just answer his questions, Nathaniel said gently. Tell him the truth. Whitmore pulled out a notebook. Let's start with something simple. What's your name? Clara's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Clara, she said finally, but there was uncertainty in her voice. They say I'm Clara. Who says that? She gestured at Nathaniel. He does, and the boy, and Rosa. But you don't remember being Clara Prescott? I remember pieces, fragments. Can you tell me anything specific about your life before the flood? Clara's hands tightened on the cloth doll in her lap. Her breathing quickened. The roses, she said. I picked the roses for the wall. And there was a horse, black with white feet. He kicked me. She touched the scar on her arm. I was scared of him, but Nathaniel said I was braver than I thought. Whitmore made a note. Anything else? The river. The water was so cold. And I was trying to find him, trying to tell him something important. Her voice cracked. But I can't remember what. Everything's broken, and I can't... That's enough. Nathaniel stepped forward. You're upsetting her. I'm conducting an investigation. You're interrogating a traumatized woman. She's answered your questions. She knows this house. She knows me. She knows our son. What more do you want? I want certainty, Mr. Prescott. And frankly, nothing she said provides that. The wallpaper could have been learned through observation. The horse. She has the scar, the exact scar, in the exact place. Scars can be explained in many ways. Then explain them. Nathaniel's voice rose. Explain how a random vagrant has my wife's eyes, my wife's scars, my wife's mannerisms, Explain how she knows details about this house that she couldn't possibly know unless she lived here. I don't have to explain them. I simply have to establish that there's reasonable doubt about her identity. And there is. Whitmore closed his notebook. I'm going to recommend to the territorial court that she be placed in protective custody pending a formal competency hearing. Clara made a sound of pure terror.
No, she gasped. No, please. I can't go back. I can't be lost again. Please don't make me.
Nobody's taking you anywhere.
Nathaniel moved to her side, putting himself between her and Whitmore. She's not going anywhere. She's staying right here.
That's not your decision to make. The hell it isn't. This is my home. She is my wife. And if you want to remove her, you're going to need more than recommendations and doubt. Whitmore's eyes narrowed.
You're making this very difficult, Mr. Prescott.
Good. I could have you arrested for obstruction. Try it. See how that plays with the territorial judge when I explain you're trying to rip a traumatized woman from her family based on nothing but the word of a banker who's had a grudge against me for years. Webb's face went red. This has nothing to do with... This has everything to do with you, Cornelius. You've never forgiven me for buying the Morrison land out from under you. Never forgiven me for being more successful than you. And now you've found a way to hurt me that looks like civic duty. That's slander. It's the truth.
Everyone in Willow Creek knows it.
Whitmore raised a hand. Gentlemen, this is getting us nowhere. He turned to Nathaniel. The hearing will be scheduled within the week. You'll receive official notice. Until then, she remains in your custody, but I'll be recommending regular check-ins from the sheriff's office. Fine. And Mr. Prescott, Whitmore paused at the door. If I were you, I'd start gathering evidence. Witnesses who knew your wife. Documentation of her identity. Because right now, all you have is hope and coincidence, and that won't be enough to satisfy the court. After they left, Clara collapsed into Nathaniel's arms, sobbing. They're going to take me, she cried. They're going to put me somewhere dark and I'll forget everything again, and I won't find my way back. Listen to me. Nathaniel held her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. Nobody is taking you anywhere. I won't let it happen. I don't care if I have to fight the entire territorial authority. You are not leaving this house. But if the court, then we'll prove who you are. We'll find witnesses. We'll document everything you remember. We'll build a case so strong that no court in the territory can deny it. What if I can't remember enough? What if the pieces never come together? Then we'll make do with the pieces we have. Nathaniel pressed his forehead to hers. You're not alone in this, Clara. Samuel and I are going to fight for you. Rosa and Jake are going to fight for you. You have a family now. You have people who love you. And we're not going to let them take you away. Samuel appeared at her side, his small hand finding hers. I waited 7 years, Mama, he said fiercely. I'm not losing you again. Clara looked at her son, at her husband, at the determination in their faces. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The days that followed were a blur of activity. Nathaniel sent word to everyone who'd known Clara before the flood. Old friends, women she'd quilted with, the minister who'd married them, anyone who might be able to testify to her identity. Some came eagerly, moved by the story and hoping to help. Others came reluctantly, skeptical, but willing to look. A few refused to come at all, convinced the whole thing was some kind of elaborate deception. Sarah Henderson from the general store was the first to visit. She arrived with fabric samples and trembling hands. Clara? She approached slowly. Clara, do you remember me?
We used to quilt together on Tuesday afternoons.
Clara studied her face for a long moment.
Flowers, she said finally. You always made flowers, even when the pattern was supposed to be something else.
Sarah burst into tears.
That's right. I did. I always did.
She turned to Nathaniel.
It's her. That's exactly the kind of thing Clara would remember about me.
Tom Bailey, who owned the neighboring ranch, came the next day. He'd been friends with Nathaniel for 20 years and had known Clara since before they married.
Clara, he said gently, do you remember the barn dance? The night you and Nathaniel first met?
Clara's brow furrowed with effort.
Music, she said. There was music, and I was wearing blue.
She looked at Nathaniel.
You stepped on my foot when we danced.
Tom laughed through his tears.
He sure did. Twice. I teased him about it for months.
That's not proof, Whitmore said later, when Nathaniel presented the growing list of witnesses. Memories can be suggested, implanted. These people want her to be Clara Prescott, so they interpret everything she says in that light.
Then what would be proof? What would satisfy you?
Something definitive. Something only Clara Prescott would know. A secret. A private memory that couldn't have been learned from anyone else. Nathaniel brought the challenge to Clara that night.
Is there anything, he asked gently, anything from our life together that only you and I would know? Something you never told anyone else? Clara was quiet for a long time. The firelight flickered across her face as she searched the broken landscape of her memory. The night before our wedding, she said finally, you came to my window.
Nathaniel's heart stopped.
You threw pebbles at the glass like a boy courting his sweetheart. And when I opened it, you said you were scared. Scared you weren't good enough for me. Scared you'd let me down.
Clara's eyes found his.
You made me promise to tell you if you ever did. Made me promise not to just suffer in silence.
Nathaniel couldn't breathe. He'd never told anyone about that night. Not a single soul. It had been his secret shame, that moment of weakness before their marriage.
And I promised, Clara continued. I promised I'd always tell you the truth, even when it hurt. Clara, his voice broke.
I kept that promise, didn't I? She reached for his hand. Even when things got hard, even when we fought, I always told you the truth.
Yes, you did.
Then let me tell you the truth now. Her grip tightened. I don't remember everything. There are pieces missing, holes in my mind that may never be filled. But I remember loving you. I remember belonging to you. And I remember choosing this life, this family, this home.
Tears slipped down her cheeks.
I am Clara Prescott. Whatever the river took from me, it couldn't take that.
The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Nathaniel spent the weekend preparing. He gathered every witness willing to testify. He documented every memory Clara had recovered. He even found the minister who'd married them, a frail old man now, but still sharp enough to remember the ceremony. I remember the bride's eyes, the minister said. Brown gold, like honey in sunlight. Never seen eyes quite that color before or since, he looked at Clara. Until now. On Sunday evening, Nathaniel found Clara in the barn. She was standing by Midnight's stall, the old black stallion who'd kicked her all those years ago. He had his head over the door, and Clara was stroking his nose with gentle fingers.
I remember being afraid of him, she said without turning around. I remember the pain when he kicked me. But I also remember something else. She paused. I remember feeling like I had to prove I wasn't weak. That fear didn't have to win.
You were never weak, Clara. Not then, not now.
I'm terrified of tomorrow.
She turned to face him.
Of what they might decide. Of losing this.
She gestured around the barn, but Nathaniel understood she meant more than just the building. She meant the life, the family, the fragile hope she'd begun to build. You're not going to lose it.
You can't promise that.
Watch me. She studied his face in the fading light.
Why are you fighting so hard for me? A woman who can barely remember your name half the time, who wakes you with screaming every night, who may never be the wife you lost.
Nathaniel stepped closer. Because I made a promise. The night before our wedding, remember? I promised to love you in sickness and in health. I promised to stand by you no matter what. You thought I was dead. I was wrong. You mourned me, moved on with your life. I survived. That's not the same as moving on. He took her hands. Clara, I spent 7 years trying to fill the hole you left. Built this ranch into an empire. Made myself rich and respected and completely empty inside. None of it mattered. None of it brought me peace. His voice cracked. And then Samuel saw you on that street, and everything I'd built came crashing down. Because you're what matters. You and Samuel. This family. Everything else is just noise. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I can't be who I was before.
I don't want you to be. I want you to be who you are now, whoever that turns out to be. What if I never fully recover? What if this is as good as it gets? Then this is as good as it gets, and I'll still love you. I'll still fight for you. I'll still be here every single day for the rest of my life. She broke then, collapsed against his chest and sobbed while he held her. I was pregnant, she whispered. That night, the night of the flood, I was pregnant and I wanted to tell you before anyone else. That's why I went out in the storm. Nathaniel closed his eyes against the pain. I lost it, she continued. In the river or after, I don't know. But I lost it. Our baby. I couldn't save it. I couldn't. Shh. He held her tighter. It wasn't your fault. I should have waited, should have stayed inside where it was safe. But I was so excited, so desperate to share the news with you. And I thought I could make it, thought I could. Clara, stop. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. You didn't do anything wrong. The flood wasn't your fault. Losing the baby wasn't your fault. None of this was your fault. Then whose fault was it? Nobody's. Sometimes terrible things happen, and there's no one to blame, no one to punish, just pain to endure and healing to find. He wiped the tears from her cheeks. You've endured enough pain to last a lifetime. Now it's time for healing, and we're going to do it together. How can you forgive me so easily? There's nothing to forgive. But, Clara, his voice was firm, I lost 7 years. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of watching our son grow up. 7 years that I can never get back. And if I've learned anything from that loss, it's that blame and guilt and regret are poison. They eat you alive from the inside. He pressed his forehead to hers. I'm done with poison. I just want to live, really live, with you. They stood there in the barn, holding each other, as darkness fell around them. And for the first time since she'd come back, Clara felt something other than fear and confusion. She felt hope. Whatever happens tomorrow, she whispered, thank you for fighting for me, for believing in me, for not giving up. I gave up once, Nathaniel said quietly. 7 years ago, when I stopped searching the river, when I accepted that you were dead and tried to move on. I won't make that mistake again. You didn't know. I should have known, should have felt it somehow, should have kept looking until I found you. The important thing is that we're here now, together. Yes, he kissed her forehead. Together. They walked back to the house hand in hand.
Samuel was waiting on the porch, his young face anxious. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Nathaniel said. "Your mother and I were just talking." "About tomorrow?" "About everything." Samuel studied their faces, reading something in their expressions that seemed to satisfy him. "We're going to win, aren't we, Papa? The hearing. We're going to win, and Mama's going to stay." Nathaniel looked at Clara, at the fear and hope mingled in her eyes, at the scars on her hands and the hollows in her cheeks, and all the evidence of suffering he couldn't undo. "Yes," he said firmly, "we're going to win." Because the alternative was unthinkable, and Nathaniel Prescott had learned the hard way that giving up was not an option. Not anymore. Not ever again. Monday morning came with brutal inevitability. Nathaniel dressed in his best suit, the same one he'd worn to Clara's memorial service 7 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on him. Back then, he'd worn it to bury his wife. Today, he'd wear it to prove she was alive. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling as Rosa helped her into a dress they'd altered to fit her thinner frame. She looked pale, fragile, like a strong wind might blow her away.
"I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't stand in front of strangers and prove I'm me."
"You won't be alone." Nathaniel knelt in front of her, taking her cold hands in his. "I'll be right beside you. So will Samuel. So will everyone who knows the truth." "What if I forget? What if they ask me something and my mind goes blank and I can't?" "Then you tell them your mind went blank. You tell them the truth. That's all anyone can ask." "The truth is that I'm broken, Nathaniel. The truth is that half my memories are gone and the other half are scattered like leaves in a storm." "The truth is that you survived something that should have killed you. The truth is that you found your way home against impossible odds. The truth is that you're Clara Prescott, and no court in the territory can change that." Samuel appeared in the doorway, dressed in his Sunday best. His face was pale but determined. "I'm ready, Papa." "Good boy. Go wait by the wagon. We'll be down in a minute." After Samuel left, Clara gripped Nathaniel's hands tighter.
"If they take me," she said quietly, "promise me you'll keep fighting. Promise me you won't give up."
"They're not going to take you."
"But if they do—"
"Clara!" His voice was fierce. "They are not taking you. I don't care what I have to do."
"There are so many people."
"They don't matter. The only people who matter are inside that courtroom." They pushed through the crowd, Jake Thornton clearing a path ahead of them. Samuel walked on Clara's other side, his small hand gripping hers with fierce protectiveness. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Nathaniel spotted familiar faces in the gallery. Sarah Henderson, Tom Bailey, Doc Caldwell, Rosa, clutching her rosary and moving her lips in silent prayer. And in the front row, Cornelius Webb, his face smug with anticipation. Judge Elijah Morrison sat behind the bench, a stern man in his 60s with iron-gray hair and eyes that revealed nothing. He'd been a judge for 30 years, known for his fairness and his intolerance for nonsense. "All rise," the bailiff called. Everyone stood. Clara swayed slightly, and Nathaniel steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "Be seated." Morrison shuffled papers on his desk. "We're here to determine the identity and competency of the woman currently residing at the Prescott Ranch. Commissioner Whitmore, you may proceed." Whitmore rose, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. "Your Honor, the Territorial Authority has serious concerns about the situation at the Prescott Ranch. A woman of unknown identity and questionable mental capacity has been taken in by Mr. Prescott, who claims she is his wife, Clara Prescott, supposedly drowned 7 years ago." "Supposedly?" Morrison's eyebrow rose. "Her body was never recovered, Your Honor. Mr. Prescott's claim rests entirely on physical similarities and partial memories that could easily be explained by coincidence or suggestion. I see. And what does the territorial authority recommend? That the woman be placed in protective custody at the Territorial Hospital for the Mentally Infirm, pending a full psychiatric evaluation and investigation into her true identity. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Clara made a small sound of distress, and Samuel's grip on her hand tightened. Mr. Prescott, Morrison turned his attention to Nathaniel. You dispute this recommendation? Strongly, Your Honor. Nathaniel stood, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. The woman sitting beside me is Clara May Prescott, my wife of 6 years before her supposed death. I have witnesses prepared to testify to her identity, as well as physical evidence and personal memories that only she would possess. Then let's hear it. Commissioner, you may call your first witness. Whitmore called a doctor from the Territorial Hospital, a thin man with spectacles and a condescending manner. He testified at length about the nature of memory disorders, about the unreliability of trauma survivors, about the possibility of suggestion and false memories. In your professional opinion, Whitmore asked, could a mentally disturbed woman be convinced that she is someone she's not? Absolutely. The human mind is remarkably susceptible to suggestion, especially when damaged by trauma. If surrounded by people insisting she is Clara Prescott, a vulnerable woman might easily adopt that identity, even believe it genuinely, without it being true. Nathaniel's jaw tightened, but he held his tongue. Next, Whitmore called 2 townspeople who expressed skepticism about Clara's identity. They'd known the real Clara, they said, and something about this woman was wrong. Her eyes are the same color, one of them admitted, but there's nothing behind them. Clara Prescott was sharp as a tack. This woman can barely string a sentence together. Because she's been through hell, Nathaniel muttered. Order, Morrison said sharply. Mr. Prescott, you'll have your chance. Finally, Whitmore called Clara herself to the stand. She rose on shaking legs. Nathaniel wanted to object, to shield her from this, but he knew it would only make things worse. The judge needed to hear from her directly. Clara took the witness chair, her hands clasped tight in her lap. The cloth doll she'd insisted on bringing clutched against her stomach. State your name for the record, Whitmore said. Clara. Her voice was barely audible. Clara Prescott. And you're certain of that? She swallowed hard. I know it in my heart. But not in your mind? You don't actually remember being Clara Prescott? I remember pieces. The house, the roses on the wallpaper, the horse that kicked me, my son's face when he was a baby. Convenient memories, Whitmore said smoothly. All things that could be observed or learned. What about something only Clara Prescott would know? Something private. Clara's face twisted with concentration. The night before our wedding, Nathaniel came to my window. He was scared. Scared he wasn't good enough for me. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. And how do we know Mr. Prescott didn't tell you this story? Coach you to repeat it? He didn't. You'll forgive me if I'm skeptical. A woman with no memory suddenly produces a perfectly convenient private moment that proves her identity? It strains credibility. I'm telling the truth. Are you? Or are you just telling us what you've been told to say? Objection! Nathaniel was on his feet. He's badgering the witness. Sustained, Morrison said. Commissioner, move on. Whitmore smiled thinly. No further questions. It was Nathaniel's turn now. He approached Clara gently, keeping his voice soft. Clara, can you tell the court about the night of the flood? What you remember? Her face went pale.
The water. It was so cold. I was trying to reach the north pasture, trying to find Nathaniel.
Why were you trying to find me? Tears welled in her eyes.
I had news. Important news. I couldn't wait until morning.
What news? Clara's hands went to her stomach, a gesture so instinctive, so maternal, that several women in the gallery gasped.
I was pregnant, she whispered. I wanted him to be the first to know.
The courtroom fell silent. And what happened to the baby, Clara?
Lost.
The word came out broken.
The river took it. Took everything.
Nathaniel turned to the judge. Your Honor, no one outside this courtroom knew that Clara was pregnant when she disappeared. Not me, not anyone. She never had the chance to tell us. How could an impostor know something that even the woman's own husband didn't know? Morrison leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. Commissioner, how do you explain this? Whitmore's composure slipped for just a moment. She could be lying, making it up for sympathy. Making up a lost pregnancy in front of her husband and son? Morrison shook his head. That seems unlikely. Your Honor, emotional manipulation is a common tactic among— I've heard enough from you, Commissioner. Mr. Prescott, call your witnesses. Nathaniel called Sarah Henderson first. She testified about the fabric patterns, about the quilting sessions, about the way Clara always made her feel welcomed, even when other women looked down on her.
That's her,
Sarah said firmly, pointing at Clara.
I don't care what anyone says. That's Clara Prescott.
Tom Bailey testified next. He talked about the barn dance, about Nathaniel stepping on Clara's feet, about the years of friendship that had followed. I've known that woman for 15 years, Tom said. Watched her marry my best friend. Watched her bring their son into the world. And I'm telling you, that's Clara. Changed by suffering, yes, but still Clara. Doc Caldwell took the stand and presented his medical findings. The scar from the horse kick, the mole at the base of her throat, the slight gap between her front teeth. Individually, these markers could be coincidence, Caldwell admitted. But taken together, they present a compelling case. The probability of a random stranger possessing all of these specific physical characteristics is extremely low. Finally, Nathaniel called the minister who had married them. Old Reverend Hawkins shuffled to the stand, his movements slow, but his eyes sharp. I remember the wedding clearly, he said. Beautiful ceremony. Summer evening. The bride wore white lace that had belonged to her grandmother. He looked at Clara. And she had the most unusual eyes I'd ever seen. Brown gold, like honey in sunlight. I've performed hundreds of weddings in my time. Never seen eyes quite that color before or since. And the woman before you today? Nathaniel asked. Hawkins smiled gently. Same eyes, same soul behind them, even if it's wounded. That's Clara Prescott. I'd stake my eternal soul on it. The testimony continued for hours. Witness after witness took the stand, some skeptical, some certain, but the weight of evidence gradually accumulated in Clara's favor. Finally, Morrison called for a recess. We'll reconvene in 1 hour, he said. I'll deliver my verdict then. Nathaniel led Clara to a small anteroom, away from the crowds and the staring eyes. Samuel followed, still clutching his mother's hand. You did well, Nathaniel said. You did so well. I couldn't stop shaking, Clara's voice trembled. Every question felt like a trap. But you answered them. You told the truth. What if it's not enough? What if he decides— Don't. Nathaniel took her face in his hands. Don't think about that. We've done everything we can. The rest is up to the judge. Samuel pressed close to his mother's side. The minister said he'd stake his soul on you, Mama. That's got to count for something. Clara managed a weak smile. You've been so brave, Samuel, through all of this. I'm so proud of you.
I'm just doing what you would have done for me. The hour passed with agonizing slowness. Nathaniel paced. Clara sat motionless, staring at nothing. Samuel held her hand and didn't let go. Finally, the bailiff called them back. The courtroom was even more crowded now, word having spread that the verdict was imminent. Nathaniel helped Clara to her seat, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Morrison took his place behind the bench. His face gave nothing away. "I've heard extensive testimony today," he began. "Witnesses who knew Clara Prescott before her disappearance. Medical evidence regarding physical markers. And, most compellingly, personal memories that could not have been known to anyone outside the intimate circle of the Prescott marriage." He paused, his eyes moving across the courtroom. "The territorial authority has raised valid concerns about mental competency and the possibility of false identity. These concerns are not unfounded. Trauma can damage the mind in profound ways, and memory is not always reliable." Clara's grip on Nathaniel's hand tightened painfully. "However," Morrison continued, "the law does not require absolute certainty. It requires reasonable judgment based on available evidence. And the evidence presented today leads me to a clear conclusion." He looked directly at Clara. "The physical markers are consistent with Clara Prescott. The personal memories are specific and verifiable. The witnesses who knew her best have testified unequivocally to her identity. And most significantly, she possesses knowledge that no imposter could possibly have, including the pregnancy she never had the chance to announce." Morrison's gavel came down with a sharp crack. "It is the judgment of this court that the woman residing at the Prescott Ranch is Clara May Prescott, wife of Nathaniel Prescott and mother of Samuel Prescott. She is hereby released to the custody of her family with no further restrictions." The courtroom erupted. Clara collapsed against Nathaniel, sobbing with relief. Samuel threw his arms around both of them, crying and laughing at the same time. Sarah Henderson was on her feet, applauding. Tom Bailey wiped tears from his weathered face. Even Doc Caldwell allowed himself a small smile. Whitmore's face had gone red with fury. Webb was already pushing toward the exit, unwilling to witness his defeat. "Order!" Morrison called, but his voice was softer now. "Order in the court." The noise gradually subsided. "Mrs. Prescott," the judge said gently, "I understand you've been through an ordeal that most of us can barely imagine. This court wishes you a full recovery and a peaceful life with your family. You're free to go."
"Thank you," Clara whispered. "Thank you."
Nathaniel helped her to her feet. His own eyes were burning, but he refused to let the tears fall. Not yet. Not here. They walked out of the courtroom together, a family reunited. The crowd parted before them, and this time the stares were different. Sympathetic, wondering. Some people reached out to touch Clara's arm as she passed, offering wordless blessings. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Nathaniel stopped on the courthouse steps and pulled Clara into his arms. "It's over," he said. "They can't take you now."
"I was so scared."
Her voice was muffled against his chest.
"So scared I'd never see home again."
"You're going home right now, and you're never leaving again." Samuel tugged at his mother's dress.
"Can we get peppermint sticks, Papa? To celebrate?"
Nathaniel laughed, a sound that surprised even him. It had been so long since he'd laughed that he'd almost forgotten how. "Yes," he said, "we can get peppermint sticks." They walked to Henderson's general store, the three of them together. Sarah Henderson met them at the door with tears streaming down her face.
"On the house," she said, pressing a handful of candy into Samuel's hands.
"All of it. On the house."
"Thank you, Mrs. Henderson." Samuel said solemnly. "For saying Mama was really Mama."
"Oh, sweetheart."
Sarah knelt down and hugged the boy.
"I never doubted it for a second."
The ride home was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. Peaceful, contented. Clara sat between Nathaniel and Samuel on the wagon seat, her head resting on her husband's shoulder, her hand holding her son's.
"I thought I'd lost everything," she said softly. "When the river took me, I thought my life was over."
"It wasn't over," Nathaniel said. "It was just waiting for you to come back."
7 years is a long time to wait.
I'd have waited 70, 100, forever, if that's what it took. Clara lifted her head and looked at him.
"I love you, Nathaniel Prescott."
The words hit him like a thunderbolt. Simple words, words he'd heard 1,000 times before, but coming from her now, after everything they'd been through, they carried a weight that left him breathless.
"I love you too," he managed. "I never stopped, even when I thought you were gone, even when I tried to bury my heart along with your memory. I never stopped loving you." "I know." She touched his face gently. "I could feel it, even in the darkness, even when I couldn't remember your name. I could feel that someone loved me, that someone was waiting."
"Always," Nathaniel said. "Always." The ranch house appeared over the final hill, windows glowing with lamplight. Rosa stood on the porch, waiting. When she saw them coming, she crossed herself and lifted her hands to the sky. "Gracias a Dios," she called out. "Gracias a Dios." They pulled into the yard, and Rosa rushed to meet them. "The judge?" she asked anxiously. "We won," Nathaniel said. "She's staying." Rosa burst into tears and pulled Clara into a fierce embrace.
"I knew it,"
she sobbed.
"I prayed, and I knew God would not let them take you." "Thank you, Rosa." Clara hugged her back. "For everything, for taking care of me, for believing in me."
"You are family, Senora. Family does not abandon family."
That night, for the first time since Clara's return, the house felt truly alive. Rosa cooked a feast. Jake and the hands came up from the bunkhouse to offer congratulations. Samuel ran from room to room, unable to contain his excitement. And Nathaniel sat at the head of the table, watching his wife laugh at something Rosa said, watching his son stuff his face with tortillas, and felt something he'd forgotten was possible. Happiness. Real, genuine, uncomplicated happiness. Later, after the dishes were cleared and the hands had gone back to their quarters, and Samuel had finally been coaxed into bed, Nathaniel and Clara stood together on the porch. The stars were out, bright and endless, the same stars that had watched over this land for millions of years.
"What happens now?" Clara asked.
"Now we live," Nathaniel said. "We heal. We build a life together."
"I'm still broken, Nathaniel. The nightmares won't stop just because we won a court case."
"I know. And we'll face them together. Every nightmare, every setback, every hard day. Together." She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders.
"I want to try," she said quietly. "To be a real wife again. A real mother. Not just a damaged woman you're taking care of."
"You've always been real, Clara. From the moment Samuel recognized you on that street."
"You know what I mean."
He did know, and his heart swelled with hope. "Whenever you're ready," he said. "No pressure, no expectations. Just whenever you're ready." She turned and kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise.
"Soon," she whispered. "I think I'll be ready soon."
They stood there until the cold drove them inside. Two people who had lost each other and found each other again, holding on tight against a world that had tried its best to tear them apart. And somewhere in the house, in a small boy's room, Samuel Prescott clutched a cloth doll to his chest and smiled in his sleep. His family was whole again. Finally, impossibly, blessedly whole. The nightmares didn't stop after the trial. 3 weeks later, Clara still woke screaming most nights, trapped in memories of cold water and darkness that her conscious mind couldn't access. Nathaniel learned to sleep light, ready to bolt from his chair the moment her cries began. He'd moved into her room after the first week, not to share her bed. That intimacy still felt too fragile, too soon. But to be there when the darkness came, to hold her hand and talk her back to reality. "The river again?" he asked one night, after a particularly violent episode had left Clara trembling and drenched in sweat.
Different this time.
Her voice was hoarse from screaming.
There were people, strangers. They kept me somewhere dark, wouldn't let me leave.
Nathaniel's blood went cold. What people?
I don't know. I can't see their faces, just shadows and voices and cold, cold hands.
She shuddered.
They kept saying I was nobody, that I didn't have a name, that I belonged to them now.
Clara. He gripped her hands tighter. Where were you? Those 7 years. Do you remember?
Pieces, fragments.
She closed her eyes.
A cabin somewhere. Mountains. A man who said he found me by the river, said I owed him for saving my life.
What man?
I don't remember his face, just his voice, and his hands.
Her own hands trembled.
He wasn't kind, Nathaniel. He made me work, made me do things. When I tried to leave, he'd lock me in the cellar until I forgot why I wanted to go.
Nathaniel felt rage building in his chest, white-hot and murderous. Is he still alive? This man? I don't know. One day I ran. Something broke loose in my head, and I remembered I had somewhere to be, someone waiting for me. I ran and kept running, and didn't stop until I couldn't run anymore. Her eyes opened, haunted and lost. That's all I remember. Running, and then being here. Being home. Nathaniel pulled her into his arms, holding her against the horrors she'd survived. You're safe now, he said fiercely. Whoever he was, whatever he did, he can't touch you here. I won't let anyone hurt you again.
I know. Her voice was small. But sometimes I feel like I'll never be free of it. Like the darkness is still inside me, waiting to pull me under.
Then we'll fight it together, every night if we have to. I'm not going anywhere. She cried against his chest until exhaustion claimed her. Nathaniel stayed awake, watching her sleep, his mind churning with questions he couldn't answer and fury he couldn't release. 7 years. Someone had kept her prisoner for 7 years, had worked her like a slave, locked her in cellars, broken her mind so thoroughly that she'd forgotten her own name. And Nathaniel had been here, building his empire, telling himself she was dead, telling himself to move on. The guilt was crushing. Morning brought new challenges. Clara's recovery was never linear. Some days she was almost like her old self, sharp-minded and capable, helping Rosa with household tasks or discussing ranch business with Nathaniel. Other days, she couldn't remember where she was or why. She'd wander the house looking for something she couldn't name, humming that tuneless melody, clutching the cloth doll like a lifeline. Samuel learned to read her moods with remarkable sensitivity for an 8-year-old.
"Mama's having a foggy day," he'd say quietly to Rosa.
We should be extra gentle.
"You're a good boy," Rosa told him one morning, "taking such good care of your mama." "She took care of me when I was a baby, even if she doesn't remember. I do." But there were breakthroughs, too. Small moments of light breaking through the clouds. One afternoon, Clara walked into the barn and stopped dead, staring at the horses in their stalls. "Dancer," she said suddenly, pointing at a bay mare. "That's Dancer.
She was born the spring before the flood. Had trouble standing at first. Nathaniel's heart leaped. That's right. You remember? I remember staying up all night with her, you and me, taking turns keeping her warm. Clara's face softened with wonder. She's beautiful now, all grown up. You always had a gift with horses. Did I? She moved toward Dancer's stall, reaching out tentatively. The mare nickered and pushed her nose into Clara's palm. She remembers me. Animals have long memories. Longer than mine, apparently.
But she was smiling now, really smiling. I want to ride again. Can I? Is it safe? We'll start slow, but yes, you can ride. They began that very afternoon. Nathaniel saddled the gentlest mare in the stable and led Clara around the corral, one hand on the bridle, the other ready to catch her if she fell. She didn't fall. Her body remembered what her mind couldn't, settling into the saddle with instinctive grace, her hands finding the correct position on the reins without being told. It's like coming home, she breathed. My body knows this, even if I don't. That's good, Clara. That's really good. By the end of the week, she was riding on her own. By the end of the month, she was helping Jake with the morning rounds, checking fences and counting cattle, with an efficiency that surprised everyone. She's got the eye, Jake told Nathaniel. Same as before. Can spot a sick calf from 200 yards. She's remembering. More than remembering, she's rebuilding. Taking what's left and making something new with it. Jake paused. She's stronger than she looks, boss. Stronger than any of us gave her credit for. Nathaniel watched Clara ride across the north pasture, her hair streaming behind her, her laughter carrying on the wind. Yes, he said quietly. She is. But strength didn't mean the darkness was gone. A month after the trial, Clara asked Nathaniel to take her to the river. Are you sure? He couldn't hide his concern. That might be difficult. I need to see it. I need to face what happened instead of just being afraid of shadows and fragments. They rode out together on a crisp autumn morning. The Devil's Fork River wound through the valley, peaceful and deceptively calm. Hard to imagine this gentle water turning into the monster that had nearly killed her. Clara dismounted at the riverbank and stood staring at the current. I was trying to cross here, she said slowly. The bridge was out, washed away in the storm, but I thought I could make it if I was careful. The river wasn't supposed to rise that fast. It didn't rise. It exploded. Her voice was distant, remembering. One moment I was in water up to my knees. The next moment I was underwater completely. The current grabbed me and I couldn't fight it. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Clara, you don't have to. I remember hitting something, a rock or a log. Pain in my head so bright I thought I'd died. She touched her temple, where a faint scar was visible beneath her hairline. When I woke up, I was on a riverbank somewhere, miles downstream. Days had passed, maybe weeks, I don't know. And that's when he found you? The man who kept you? She nodded slowly. He said I was lucky. Said the river had spit me out like a fish that wasn't worth eating. Said I owed him my life. Her hands clenched into fists. He gave me a new name, called me Ruth. Said Clara was dead and gone, and I should forget she ever existed. But you didn't forget. Couldn't forget. Even when I couldn't remember anything specific, I knew I wasn't Ruth. Knew I belonged somewhere else. With someone else. She turned to face him. That's what kept me alive, Nathaniel. Not hope, exactly, because I didn't have enough memory left for hope. Just this feeling, this certainty that I was supposed to be somewhere, with someone, and I had to find my way back. Nathaniel closed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry, he said roughly. I'm so sorry I stopped looking. So sorry I gave up on you. You didn't know. I should have known. Should have felt it somehow.
Should have kept searching until I found you." Clara pulled back and looked at him with those honey gold eyes that still made his heart ache. "The important thing is that we're here now, both of us, together." "Is it enough, after everything you've been through?" "I don't know yet." Her honesty was brutal.
"Some days I feel like I'm finally healing. Other days I feel like I'll never be whole again. But I'm trying, Nathaniel. Every day, I'm trying. That's all I can ask." She turned back to the river, watching the water flow past. "I want to let it go," she said quietly. "The anger, the fear, the 7 years I lost. I want to let the river take it all and wash it away." "Can you?" "Not today. Maybe not tomorrow." She took a deep breath. "But someday. I have to believe that someday I'll stand here and feel nothing but peace." They stayed by the river until the sun began its descent, then rode home together in comfortable silence. That night, for the first time, Clara didn't have nightmares. The town's acceptance came gradually, in small gestures and quiet acknowledgments. Sarah Henderson started saving fabric samples she thought Clara might like. The minister, Reverend Hawkins, invited the family to Sunday services and treated Clara with the warmth of an old friend rather than the caution of a stranger dealing with damaged goods. Even some of the skeptics came around. Mrs. Patterson, who'd been one of the most vocal doubters, approached Clara after church one Sunday with tears in her eyes. "I knew your mother," she said quietly, "before she passed. You have her smile. I don't know how I didn't see it before." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson." "Welcome home, dear. Welcome home." But not everyone was ready to forgive and forget. Cornelius Webb had become a bitter enemy. His humiliation at the trial had curdled into something ugly, and he made no effort to hide his contempt. "Prescott's playing house with a mad woman," Nathaniel heard him say at the general store one afternoon. "Mark my words, this will end badly. You can't build a life on delusion." Nathaniel's fists clenched, but he kept walking. Letting Webb goad him into a fight would only give the man ammunition. "Ignore him," Jake advised later. "He's just a bitter old fool with nothing better to do than spread misery." "I know, but if he says one more word about Clara where I can hear it, then I'll hold him and you can hit him. But until then, don't give him the satisfaction." Clara surprised everyone by handling the gossip with grace. "They can say whatever they want," she told Nathaniel one evening. "I know who I am now. I know where I belong. No amount of whispered poison can take that away from me. You're stronger than I am. Webb's lucky I haven't broken his jaw yet. Violence won't change his mind. Time might. Results definitely will." She smiled. "The best revenge is living well, Nathaniel. Let's live so well that it makes him choke." They did live well. Better than Nathaniel had lived in 7 years. He started coming home earlier, delegating more responsibility to Jake so he could spend time with his family. They ate dinner together every night. They played cards by the fire. They taught Samuel chess and listened to Clara read aloud from books she'd loved before the flood. The intimacy between them grew slowly, carefully, like a seedling pushing through hard soil. Clara moved from the guest room to the master bedroom 2 months after the trial. They still slept apart at first, Nathaniel on a cot by the window, giving her space to adjust. But gradually, incrementally, the distance closed. "I'm ready," Clara said one night, reaching for his hand across the darkness. "I'm ready to be your wife again. Really your wife. If you still want me." "I've always wanted you." His voice was rough with emotion. "From the first moment I saw you at that church social, when we were young and stupid and had no idea what life had in store." "I don't remember that moment." "Then let me give you a new one." He crossed the space between them and took her face in his hands. "Clara May Prescott," he said softly, "I have loved you for 15 years. Through happiness and grief,
through separation and reunion, through every storm and every calm. And I will love you for 15 more, 50 more, however many years God gives us. I will love you until my last breath, and probably beyond. Tears slipped down her cheeks.
That was beautiful.
I've been practicing. She laughed then, a real laugh, full and free. You always were romantic underneath all that cowboy stoicism? Only for you. Then come here, cowboy. Show me how romantic you can be. What followed was tender and careful and occasionally awkward, as reconnection after long separation always is. But it was also healing, this physical reclaiming of what they'd lost, this proof that their bodies still remembered each other, even when Clara's mind faltered. Afterward, lying tangled together in the moonlight, Clara spoke quietly. I think I'm going to be okay. I know you are. Not perfect, not the woman I was before, but okay. Maybe even good, eventually. You're already good. You're already better than good. She turned her head to look at him. Do you really believe that? Or are you just being kind? Clara, I've watched you survive things that would have destroyed most people. I've watched you claw your way back from darkness that should have swallowed you whole. I've watched you face your fears and fight for your family, and refuse to give up even when everything said you should. His voice cracked. If that's not good, I don't know what is. She kissed him then, soft and sweet. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For not giving up on me, even when I'd given up on myself. Never. He pulled her closer. Never, ever. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time in 7 years, Nathaniel Prescott felt truly at peace. But peace, as he should have known, was never permanent. It came in the form of a letter, delivered by a hard-faced stranger who rode onto the property 3 days later. Nathaniel was in the barn when Jake came running. Boss, you need to come to the house, now! The stranger was waiting in the parlor, hat in hands, eyes cold and calculating. He was maybe 50 years old, weathered by hard living, with a scar running down one cheek. Mr. Prescott? His voice was flat, emotionless. Who's asking? Name's Callahan. I represent certain interested parties from up north. He held out an envelope. They asked me to deliver this. Nathaniel took the envelope warily. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in cramped handwriting. His blood ran cold as he read it. You will return what belongs to me. The woman calling herself Clara Prescott is my property, bought and paid for. I saved her life, and she owes me 7 years of service she never completed. Either send her back or pay the debt she owes. $5,000, gold. You have 2 weeks. There was no signature, just a crude drawing of a man hanging from a noose. Nathaniel looked up at Callahan. Who sent this? Can't say. Can't or won't? Both. Callahan's smile was ugly. But I'd take it seriously if I was you. The man who wrote that letter doesn't make empty threats. Get off my property. Just delivering a message, Prescott. What you do with it is your business. He put his hat back on. 2 weeks. I'd start counting. After he left, Nathaniel stood motionless, the letter crumpled in his fist. Boss? Jake's voice was tight with concern. What is it? Trouble. Nathaniel's voice was deadly quiet. The worst kind. The man who'd kept Clara prisoner for 7 years hadn't forgotten about her, and now he wanted her back. Nathaniel didn't tell Clara about the letter, not at first, not when she was finally sleeping through the night, not when her smile had started reaching her eyes again, not when Samuel had begun calling her Mama, with the casual ease of a boy who'd never doubted she belonged to him. He couldn't bring that darkness back into their home. Not yet. "What do we do, boss?" Jake asked that night, after Clara and Samuel had gone to bed. "We find out who sent it, and we end this." "How?" Nathaniel stared at the crumpled letter in his hands. Callahan said the man was from up north, mountains. Clara mentioned a cabin in the mountains. "That's a lot of territory to cover." "Then we start covering it." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "This man kept my wife prisoner for 7 years. He broke her mind. He stole her from her family. And now he thinks he can demand money for her like she's livestock? He's dangerous, Nathaniel. You saw Callahan."
These aren't the kind of men who negotiate. Good. Neither am I. They rode out before dawn, leaving Rosa and 2 trusted hands to guard the house. Nathaniel told Clara he had business in the Northern Territories. Cattle deals. Nothing to worry about. She'd looked at him with those knowing eyes.
"Be careful."
Always.
"Nathaniel." She caught his hand before he could mount his horse. "Whatever you're really doing up there, come back to me. Promise."
He'd kiss. "I'm family." Something in the bartender's expression shifted. Understanding, maybe. Or pity. "Follow the North Fork of the river. About 20 miles up, you'll see a dead pine split by lightning. Take the trail east from there. Another 5 miles, maybe 6. Can't miss the cabin." Nathaniel left gold on the bar. "You never saw me. Never saw nobody." They found the cabin 3 days later. It was exactly as Clara had described in her fragmented nightmares. Small. Isolated. A cellar door visible at the side, padlocked with heavy chains. Jake counted 2 men outside. Callahan and another, younger, both armed. "Where's Cobb?" Nathaniel whispered. "Inside, probably. That smoke from the chimney means someone's home." "Can we take them?" Jake checked his rifle. "We can try." "I need Cobb alive. The others don't matter." "Understood." They waited until dusk, when the light was failing and the men by the fire had grown careless with whiskey. Nathaniel circled around the back while Jake positioned himself with a clear shot at the front. 1 whistle. That was the signal. Nathaniel took a breath, said a prayer, and whistled. Jake's rifle cracked. The younger man dropped without a sound. Callahan scrambled for his gun, but Nathaniel was already on him, driving him to the ground with a fury that had been building for weeks. 1 punch. 2. Callahan's nose shattered. His hand scrabbled for a knife, but Nathaniel caught his wrist and twisted until bones snapped. Callahan screamed. "Where is he?" Nathaniel's voice was barely human. "Where's Cobb?" "Inside," Callahan gasped. "He's inside, you crazy bastard." Nathaniel slammed his head against the ground, and Callahan went limp. The cabin door burst open. A man stood silhouetted against the firelight, shotgun raised. "Who the hell are you?" Nathaniel stepped into the light. "I'm the husband of the woman you stole." Ezra Cobb was smaller than Nathaniel had imagined. Wiry. Mean-eyed. The kind of man who survived by cunning rather than strength. "Ruth?" Cobb's lip curled. "You came all this way for that broken-down piece of—" Nathaniel shot him in the knee. Cobb went down screaming, the shotgun clattering away. Nathaniel kicked it aside and stood over him, his pistol aimed at the man's head. "Her name is Clara. Clara May Prescott. And she's not broken. She's the strongest person I've ever known." "She's mine," Cobb spat through the pain. "I saved her life, fed her, kept her alive when the river should have killed her. You kept her prisoner. You worked her like a slave. You locked her in a cellar until she forgot her own name. She owed me. She owed you nothing." Nathaniel's finger tightened on the trigger. "You stole 7 years of her life. 7 years of our son growing up without his mother. 7 years of me thinking she was dead. So shoot me.
Cobb's eyes were defiant, even through the pain. Go ahead. Pull the trigger. See if it makes you feel better. Nathaniel wanted to. God, how he wanted to. His whole body shook with the need to end this man, to erase him from existence, to avenge every nightmare Clara had suffered. But something stopped him. Clara's voice in his head. The conversations they'd had about healing, about letting go, about not becoming the darkness you're fighting against. No, Nathaniel said slowly. Killing you would be too easy, too quick. He holstered his pistol. Jake, tie him up. We're taking him back to face justice. Justice? Cobb laughed, an ugly, rasping sound. What justice? I didn't break any laws. She was a nobody when I found her. No name, no memory, no one looking for her. Someone was always looking for her. She just didn't know it. Nathaniel leaned down until his face was inches from Cobb's. And now you're going to spend the rest of your miserable life in a territorial prison, thinking about the woman you couldn't break.
The woman who found her way home, despite everything you did to destroy her.
She'll never be free of me, Cobb hissed. I'm in her head, in her nightmares. Every time she screams in her sleep, that's me. Every time she can't remember something, that's me. I own pieces of her that you'll never touch. Nathaniel stood. You're wrong. She's already free. She just doesn't know it yet. He turned his back on Ezra Cobb and walked out of the cabin. They delivered Cobb to the territorial marshal 2 days later. The charges were numerous. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, assault. The evidence from the cabin was damning. Chains, locks, a cellar that bore the marks of years of captivity. He'll hang, the marshal said grimly, or spend the rest of his days in prison. Either way, he won't be bothering anyone again. Nathaniel nodded, but he felt no satisfaction. Revenge, it turned out, was hollow. The only thing that would truly heal Clara was time. And love, and the knowledge that the monster from her nightmares could never touch her again. He rode home as fast as the horses could carry him. Clara was waiting on the porch when he arrived, her face pale with worry that transformed into relief the moment she saw him.
Nathaniel!
She ran to meet him, throwing herself into his arms.
I was so scared. I knew you weren't just buying cattle. I knew something was wrong.
It's over. He held her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair. It's all over.
What's over? What happened?
He led her inside, sat her down, and told her everything. The letter, the threat, the journey north, what he'd found at the cabin, Ezra Cobb in chains, awaiting trial. Clara listened in silence, her face unreadable. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment.
You could have been killed,
she said finally. I had to end it. Had to make sure he could never come for you again.
You should have told me. I had a right to know.
I know. I'm sorry.
I just couldn't bear to bring that darkness back into our home when you were finally starting to heal.
Clara stood and walked to the window, her back to him. I remember him now, she said quietly. Cobb. His face. His voice. The way he'd look at me when I did something wrong. She shuddered. I remember the cellar, the darkness, the cold. I remember begging him to let me out, and him saying, I hadn't earned it yet. Clara, let me finish. She turned to face him, and there were tears on her cheeks. I remember all of it now. Every terrible thing he did, every way he tried to break me. And I remember something else, too. What? I remember refusing to break. Her voice strengthened. I remember holding on to something, even when I couldn't remember what it was. A feeling, a certainty, that I belonged to someone, that someone was waiting for me. She crossed to him and took his hands. That was you, Nathaniel. You were the thread I held onto in the darkness. Even when I couldn't remember your face or your name, I remembered your love. And that love kept me alive. I should have found you sooner. I should have never stopped looking. You found me when it mattered. You fought for me when everyone said I wasn't worth fighting for. You brought me home, and you kept me safe, and you never gave up, even when I gave you every reason to. She pulled him into an embrace. That's enough, she whispered. That's more than enough. That's everything. They stood there for a long time, holding each other in the fading light. The trial of Ezra Cobb happened 6 weeks later. Clara testified. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done, standing in front of strangers and recounting the horrors she'd endured. But she did it with her head high and her voice steady. And when she was finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Cobb to life in the territorial prison without possibility of parole. As the guards led him away, Cobb turned and looked at Clara one last time. You'll never forget me, he said. Clara met his eyes without flinching. You're right, I won't. But not because you broke me, because I survived you. And every day I live free and happy and whole, I'll remember that you tried to destroy me and failed. Cobb's face twisted with impotent rage as the guards dragged him through the door. Clara watched him go, then turned to Nathaniel. It's really over, she said, wonder in her voice. It's really over. Samuel appeared at her side, slipping his hand into hers. Can we go home now, Mama? Clara smiled down at her son. Yes, sweetheart. Let's go home. Spring arrived early that year, transforming the ranch into a riot of green and wildflowers. Clara's recovery accelerated after the trial. With Cobb in prison and the threat finally eliminated, the nightmares began to fade. She still had bad nights occasionally, but they were the exception now rather than the rule. She threw herself into the work of the ranch, proving herself just as capable as she'd been before the flood. She redesigned the breeding program for the quarter horses, quadrupling the operation's efficiency. She renegotiated supply contracts that saved the ranch thousands of dollars. She organized the household with such precision that even Rosa was impressed. She is like the old Clara, Rosa told Nathaniel one evening, but also different, stronger maybe, more sure of herself. She's been through fire. It burned away everything that wasn't essential. And what was left? Nathaniel watched Clara across the room, where she was helping Samuel with his arithmetic homework. Steel, he said softly. Pure steel. The town's full acceptance came on a Sunday morning in May. The Prescotts arrived at church as a family, as they had every week since the trial. But this Sunday was different. This Sunday, people didn't just nod politely. They came forward with handshakes and hugs and words of welcome. We're glad you're back, Mrs. Prescott, the postmaster's wife said, pressing Clara's hand. We always knew you'd find your way home, added the blacksmith's mother. Even Cornelius Webb, who'd avoided them since his humiliation at the competency hearing, offered a stiff nod of acknowledgement. After the service, Reverend Hawkins asked Clara to stay for a moment. I wanted to thank you, he said quietly, for your courage, for your testimony at the trial. What you did will help other women who suffered similar horrors. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the bravest thing anyone can do, he smiled. Welcome home, Clara. Truly. That afternoon, the family rode out to the river. It was Clara's idea. She wanted to stand at the place where her life had nearly ended and mark how far she'd come. They dismounted at the bank where she'd tried to cross 7 years ago. The water was gentle now, sparkling in the spring sunshine. "I used to hate this river," Clara said, her eyes on the current, "for what it took from me. 7 years. A baby, my memories, my identity." "And now?" Nathaniel asked. "Now I understand that the river was just water doing what water does. It wasn't personal. It wasn't punishment. It was just nature, indifferent and unstoppable." She picked up a stone and turned it over in her fingers. "I'm the one who chose to cross in a storm. I'm the one who survived against all odds. I'm the one who found my way home." She threw the stone into the water. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" Samuel asked. "For letting me go when I needed to go. For bringing me back when I was ready to come back. For teaching me that nothing is permanent, not even suffering." She looked at her son, at her husband. "Especially not suffering." Samuel picked up his own stone. "Can I throw one too?" "Of course." He hurled it into the river with all his 8-year-old strength. "That's for the 7 years you took my mama," he announced, "and for making my papa sad, and for all the nightmares." "Samuel," Nathaniel started, but Clara shook her head. "Let him. He has a right to his anger too." Samuel threw another stone, and another, each one accompanied by a grievance, a hurt, a fear. When he was finished, he was breathing hard, but his face was clearer somehow, lighter. "Feel better?" Clara asked. "Yeah, I think I do." Nathaniel added his own stone to the river. He didn't say anything out loud. The words were between him and the water, him and God, him and the years of guilt and regret that he was finally ready to release. They stood together on the riverbank, watching the current carry their offerings downstream. "What happens now?" Samuel asked.
"Now we live," Clara said simply. "We build a life. We make new memories to replace the ones we lost."
"And we stay together?"
"Always."
She pulled her son into a hug.
"Always and forever."
Summer brought growth. Autumn brought harvest. Winter brought quiet evenings by the fire. Clara's memories continued to return in fragments, pieces of a puzzle slowly assembling themselves into something recognizable. She remembered her wedding day. She remembered Samuel's first steps. She remembered 1,000 small moments that had once seemed insignificant, but now felt precious beyond measure. "I dreamed about our honeymoon last night," she told Nathaniel one morning. "The cabin by the lake. The way you burned the fish you tried to cook for dinner." Nathaniel laughed. "I told you that fish was defective." "You told me a lot of things, most of them ridiculous." But she was smiling. "I'm starting to remember why I fell in love with you."
"Starting to? After all we've been through?"
The falling in love part was easy. It's the remembering part that took time. He pulled her into his arms. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere."
"I know," she kissed him softly. "That's what I remember most of all."
Spring came again, bringing with it new life and new hope. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching Samuel chase fireflies across the yard, Clara took Nathaniel's hand.
"I have something to tell you," she said.
"Good news or bad news?"
"Good news. At least, I hope you'll think so."
She placed his hand on her stomach. Nathaniel's breath caught. "Clara, are you—"
"Doc Caldwell confirmed it this afternoon. We're going to have another baby."
For a moment, Nathaniel couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stare at his wife with tears streaming down his face. "A baby," he finally managed. "Are you happy?"
"Happy doesn't begin to cover it."
He pulled her into his arms, careful of her belly.
"I'm terrified and overjoyed and grateful and amazed and about 50 other emotions I can't name."
"That sounds about right."
When?
Late autumn, Doc thinks. Around harvest time. Nathaniel pressed his forehead to hers. We're going to have another child. You and me. After everything. After everything. Clara's eyes were bright with tears and joy. Turns out the river didn't take everything after all. It left us enough to build something new. Something better. Something ours. Samuel came running up, fireflies forgotten.
What's going on? Why are you crying, Papa?
Happy tears, Nathaniel said, wiping his face. Come here, son. We have news. Clara took Samuel's hands.
How would you feel about being a big brother?
Samuel's eyes went wide.
A brother? Or a sister?
We don't know yet, but there's a baby coming. A new member of our family. Samuel let out a whoop that probably scared every firefly in the county. He threw his arms around his mother, then his father, then his mother again.
This is the best day ever, he declared. First Mama comes back, then we beat the bad man at the trial, and now we're getting a baby. Can this year get any better?
I don't see how, Nathaniel said, laughing. They sat together on the porch as darkness fell. Samuel squeezed between his parents, all three of them touching Clara's stomach, as if they could feel the new life growing there.
Thank you,
Clara said softly.
For what? For not giving up, for fighting for me, for believing I was still in there, even when I couldn't believe it myself.
She looked at her husband, at her son. For giving me a reason to come home. You gave yourself a reason, Nathaniel said. You held on. You survived. You found your way back. All I did was be here when you arrived.
All you did was love me. When I couldn't remember being lovable. When I couldn't remember anything except fear and darkness, you loved me anyway.
I always will. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder and watched the stars emerge one by one. The river had tried to take everything, but it had failed. She had a husband who loved her, a son who believed in her, a home that welcomed her, a baby on the way, and a future that stretched out before her, full of possibility and promise. 7 years of darkness, 7 years of captivity, 7 years of forgetting who she was, but also 7 years of holding on, 7 years of refusing to break, 7 years of clinging to a love she couldn't remember but couldn't release. And now she was home, really, truly, finally home. Clara May Prescott closed her eyes and breathed in the scent of spring grass and horse sweat and something cooking in Rosa's kitchen. This was her life, scarred but whole, broken but rebuilt, lost but found. And she wouldn't trade a single moment of it. Not the pain, not the fear, not the long years of darkness. Because all of it, every terrible step of the journey, had led her here, to this porch, to this family, to this love that had outlasted death itself. The river had tried to end their story, but love had written a different ending. And it was better than anything Clara had ever dreamed. The Prescott family sat together in the gathering darkness, 3 hearts beating as one, a fourth just beginning its journey. The stars came out, bright and eternal. And somewhere, a river flowed on, carrying its secrets to the sea. But some secrets refused to stay buried. Some loves refused to die. And some families, forged in fire and tested by storm, emerged stronger than steel and more precious than gold. This was their truth. This was their story. And no river, no darkness, no force on earth could ever take it away from them again.